Hey, everybody. Welcome to Daniel Davis Deep Dive, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Has the United States opened up a Pandora's box with its response to the Houthis in the Red Sea? Do we have a strategy for success? Do we have a strategy at all? Where is this going? To help us break this down, we have show favorite Tony Shaffer with us today, president of Project Sentinel, host of the Hard Truth podcast, and of course, a decorated combat veteran who knows everybody in Washington. So it's great to have you on the show today, Tony, because we're going to need somebody who knows what's going on to try to untangle this mess.
Thanks, Danny. No, I like to believe that despite our differences, people who are civilized can still communicate. So I don't want to get in the details. Your audience can know that you and I spoke about some of the things I'm involved in, and I'm trying to get people to cough up information that you and I would talk about, right? I mean, I think it's a fair summary, right? We're just trying to get to the bottom of things.
Exactly what we're trying to do. And then sometimes when we find out, we get to the bottom of things, if we don't like the answer, we try to provide better alternatives for them to some of these policymakers to choose. And that's what I hope we can get done here. So just kind of to bring people up to speed a little bit, if they haven't been seeing everything that's been going on over the weekend, there have been yet more attacks against the Houthis in the Middle East. There have been more attacks against the American forces in the Middle East. Iran has been getting a lot more boisterous in who they've been attacking. So they're not taking a lot of this stuff lying down, and they're actually going on the offense in some regards. In various theaters around the Middle East here, all surrounding the kind of the central hub of all this is, of course, the Israeli-Hamas war, and that's going to figure prominently here. But first of all, I want to take a look at what is our strategy. What are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? And let's first of all hear from the President of the United States about I think on the 12th of January, so about a week or so ago. Here's what he was saying when asked about what we're doing in the Houthi issue.
Continue bombing the Houthis if the attacks don't stop. Will you continue with the strikes, sir?
We will make sure that we respond to the Houthis as they continue this outrageous behavior, along with our allies.
Is the fact possible?
No. Iran does not want a war with us.
Are you willing to call the Houthis a terrorist group, sir?
I think they are.
Were the strikes successful last night, sir?
Yes. I don't think there's any civilian casualties. That's another reason why it's a success.
So apparently it was a success if we didn't kill anybody inadvertently. Didn't really talk about what's next or what we're trying to accomplish in this, other than we're just going to continue going on. Well, General Kellogg over the weekend on Fox believes that we should be doing a lot more than what the Biden administration is doing so far. Here's what he said.
They really need to do something about that. And we know where those missiles come from. So these little tit-for-tat operations that we have, hitting the Houthis, maybe some type of strikes on either their airfields or the missile batteries, they need to raise the gain a little bit. They need to go after the leadership, and they need to go out and actually target maybe where these missiles are coming from in Iran as well. Until we get serious about it, Eric, they're going to keep doing it. It'll be continual. And one of these days, we're going to be unlucky, and we're going to lose an American.
So General Kellogg thought that Biden wasn't doing enough, but General Keane thinks that even Kellogg is not doing enough. He says we should expand even further.
We have to hit the IRGC capabilities that are controlling not only the Houthis, but the 6 or 7 other proxies in the region. What is that? That's their training center where the proxies go to train. It's their bases, it's their headquarters, and also it's their leaders. Reagan did this. Bases, oil platforms in the 80s. Trump did it with leaders a few years ago, and that shuts these guys down. Only going after the proxies themselves will not change it. Why is that? Because Iran doesn't care if the rockets and missiles get destroyed. They'll provide more of them. They don't care if we kill some of the Houthis.
But here's the problem with some of that is that what Keane doesn't ever talk about, and all these things I've heard him say, is the what comes next, or what if Iran doesn't do what he suggests and backs down? Because here's what we've seen, Tony, in the last few days and weeks of this situation here, is that you've seen a much more confident Iran. They're taking a lot more action now than they've struck targets in Pakistan, in Iraq, and in Syria, in response to Israeli and U.S. stuff. Obviously, the things in the Red Sea are certainly supported by Iran. And then not to forget about the issues about U.S. forces in Syria and in Iraq that have come under nearly daily attacks now. So Iran has shown no indication that if we hit them harder, that suddenly they're going to back down. So the question comes, two questions actually. First of all, what's our strategy? And second of all, is this the best way to go after it, to hit them hard? Will it accomplish something useful for us?
It's a lot to break down, but let me start. First, we're involving ourselves, as we often do, in issues which we don't fully understand. The root of the Iranian issue goes back well before our presence on the world stage. You've heard the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. We didn't start the fire, and we're trying to fight it, and it's kind of insane. The issues regarding Iran and Saudi Arabia go back to the Sunni Shia split. The Sunni, being the Arabs, being the larger faction of Islam, is opposed by the Sunni, the Shia, which are the Iranians. This precedes us by a good 1,500 years. So we're not going to resolve it. What we can do, and this is what I've said, we're not the world policeman. It's not our job to go out and do everything. Our job is to be good neighbors. If you're living in a neighborhood, I live in a community where we all work together. Well, we had to go through some decisions today on some repairs because I'm on the board. So the idea here is that we don't dictate to people. We try to resolve things as a community. This is what the Biden administration missed. This is what most other administrations missed too. Trump got it right. Trump was doing a combination of trying to figure out a way to bring together our allies, which are the Arabs, which are the Sunni. Just saying, it's not. I'm not here to judge. I'm simply here to state the Sunni were the ones we chose to align with. Problem is this: the Biden folks want to align with the Shia. They want to be with the Iranians. This goes back to the Carter administration. Zbigniew Brzezinski, for whatever bizarre reason, wanted to side with the Shia, even after they took our hostages back in '79. It was like, oh, okay. But that's been the Democrats forever. So this cattywampus, to coin a term, obtuse, bifurcation of U.S. policy is what has gotten us here. And so we are literally sitting on the fence. And the Biden administration is completely willing to do this. John Kirby said over the weekend, and we'll probably get to that. Yeah, traumatic brain injury by our folks who are being shot at by the Iranians. Yeah, no big deal. Yeah. What's a little brain injury between friends, right? I mean, come on. This is the insanity of the policy. So Keene is partially right. Keene is correct that Trump and others, and full disclosure, I was advisor to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs back then, and to Mike Pompeo. I was in the rooms with him on a lot of this stuff. The idea was to find a path forward to work to ally with and organize an Arab NATO, for example. I spent time with Bud McFarlane at the State Department with Mike Pompeo's folks working on this. So the idea is, it's not our job to do your job, right? It's not my job to defend the equities of the Sunni. It's not. But there are things that we can do to be helpful within the alliance. One thing is creating the Abraham Accords, where you bring people together with the idea of a condominium based on trade and commerce, not on war. But there should be a military aspect of it if those who are not in the alliance decide to interfere with it. I am all for fair trade. I don't believe that other nations will be as fair as we are. And I'll just say that. I mean, I get in trouble all the time because, you're a neocon. I'm not a neocon. I'm saying that if we live up to our values of free trade, free expression of ideas, free passage, then our job is to help defend that as part of the alliance. I was on with a British podcast earlier today talking about this, about the fact that British depend a lot on liquid petroleum gas coming from Oman, which means that they have to go through that straits of into the Red Sea and through the Suez Canal to get their fuel. So they're an ally. They're now working with us. So I'm not against the idea of working with alliances. I'm against the idea of having no clear policy, which then leads me to the answer to your question. There's no strategy because there's no policy. There's no clear definition of whose side we're on at this point, because the Biden administration doesn't want that. The Biden administration wants to return to the joint agreed upon framework for the nuclear deal with Iran, which by the way, was never a deal to dissuade or prevent Iran from getting a bomb, the nuclear weapons. It's a hardened path to get them just off of Obama's watch. That's all it was. So, but that's what they want back. So when you're sitting in the middle, the Biden administration sitting in the middle, as a matter of fact, they're sitting kind of in the middle of all these different equities and interests, and not actually doing anything to define our interests. There's no interest.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that really is aggravating to me is that as I don't hear any conversation, whether it's from Biden, whether it's from Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, or Kirby. I never hear them say what our interests are and critically what the objectives are. So right now you're hearing privately behind in the Pentagon, they're saying, well, we're just basically preparing for a long war now, a new open-ended with no end. It's just we're just going to keep shooting, but towards no objective. What is the intent? What do you want to accomplish with this force?
Right.
I don't even hear that. And if you don't have that, Tony, I don't see how you can accomplish anything. You won't even know what success looks like.
Right. And so I'm a Reagan guy, and so Reagan had decided as a policy point, we're going to win the Cold War. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to state what the reality was. And his strategy is pretty easy. What is your strategy regarding the Soviets? They lose, we win. That's pretty clear. But within the context of that, that's pretty clear commander's guidance. Okay, I can deal with that. So let's set up a series of budgetary and programmatic functionalities that will achieve that. We wanted, we did. We beat the Soviets for better or for worse. We helped. When we did it pretty much bloodlessly. We did not do it via armed conflict. We did it by understanding a series of cultural and economic shortcomings that the communist system would fall in on itself. And it did. It was economic. The whole SDI thing, Danny, there was nothing there. We would not ever have the technology available to us to basically create this dome of protection. But the Russians didn't know that. They believed it. It was all about their perception. And so we manage that effectively by understanding their centers of gravity and defeating their centers of gravity without having to use military force. It's another form of bluffing, if you will. But that's the idea here. You don't have, the best use of military force is not using military force ever.
Indeed, and in fact, I want to zero in on that term there for a minute. Center of gravity. For those who may not know, center of gravity is basically the one key thing that any side has to have in order to succeed at what it's doing, and the thing that you want to take away from them to prevent them, etc. But let's look at that, the center of gravity, because I think that if you think one thing is a center of gravity, but the other side thinks something else is, you may be going after something that it's not even consequential to them. And therefore your objectives could not be accomplished by use of your force here. And I think that plays in hard with this whole Iranian center of gravity, because the question is, what is most valuable to them? Because an argument can be made that going after the Houthis militarily, going after Iran militarily, like Keen's saying, could actually be something that they welcome and that they want, because they think that that could help them over time get to our center of gravity. So what do you think Iran's actual center of gravity is, and what could we do different than just going after it with missiles?
Sustaining their power, especially against those people who are rising up against them internally, and extending their belief that their brand of Islam is the superior one. Again, we have to understand that they don't think like us. That's why the mullahs are in charge there. That they are a theocracy, not a democracy, not remotely a democracy. The basic tenets of Islam and what they believe is their version of Islam is part of what drives them. That's why you've seen these Sunni Shia wars. So we're not going to affect that. That's not our job. If Sunni and Shia want to duke it out, then that's on them. We should be left out of it. What impacts on us, though, is the nuclear issue, because Iran believes it is due to have nuclear weapons, and simply because the Saudi Arabians don't have them physically, they do have them. They're available to them via Pakistan. They've already paid Pakistan. Their bombs, the bombs that the Saudis have purchased, are sitting in a warehouse in Rawalpindi. Just saying. So the idea here is for us to be helpful to prevent another armed conflict. This is where my friends on the left also agree, but they're very quiet about it because they see the disruption being caused by the Biden White House. By the way, finally, Code Pink, Madia finally calls out Biden, the anti-war Code Pink folks. Not been in the room with them. It's like, it's for goodness sake, they finally called out Biden for this bellicose effort to get us into World War III. And that's what he's trying to do. It's not about Sunni Shia. They don't care. That is, the Biden administration doesn't care. These things we're talking about, they don't care. What they care about, the Biden administration cares about, is essentially trying to implement this global one world order, World Economic Forum system, build back better. So what the Sunni and Shia are doing really matters not to the Biden administration. The Biden administration continues to push for what their goals are. Essentially the harvesting of energy for purposes of political control. The whole green energy deal, we could talk about that someday. I've got a degree in that, and I believe that this whole idea. By the way, there's no global climate crisis. Does not exist, but that's what they're using. They're also trying to use this whole framework of trying to engage with the world to do the opposite, to create hate, discontent, and confusion regarding the engagement. They are using these engagements, these opportunities, to actually consolidate their power over these things. And that goes back to how obvious it is because of what John Kirby says. They don't care about people. They don't care about things. It's all about a political agenda that's designed to create certain conditions for essentially the Biden administration and the other globalists. So that's where this is all going.
Actually, it's a good segue here. I want to, because that's what I want to jump to next. Because over the weekend, Kirby did address some of the things you mentioned, but he also added some additional things.
So are these deterrence operations actually working?
Well, the efforts that we're going after with respect to the Houthis, there's really two arms here. One is self-defense. Obviously, you want to be able to protect shipping at sea, so being able to knock things out of the sky as they're fired at our ships or merchant ships. Number two, and you've seen us do this now in just recent days, is take action ashore in Yemen. In other words, preemptive strikes. And it's all really designed to degrade and to disrupt the Houthis' ability to conduct these attacks.
So one of the great things about saying disrupt and degrade is you can't measure it, so you can't ever be held down. It can be whatever you want. But when the commander-in-chief himself was asked about this, he was a little bit less obtuse. He actually said this.
Yemen working. Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't really know what we're doing, but it's not doing anything. But, I mean, I guess we'll just keep going because what else are we going to do? And then Kirby also added, I think, subsequent to that, what you had mentioned at the top of the show about the U.S. casualties.
As we understand at this early hour on Sunday morning, it's only a very small number of U.S. troops that were affected. They're being seen for traumatic brain injuries with some symptoms of concussions, but no serious physical injuries other than that. Not that that's not serious enough. Of course it is. But we understand it's a small number and it's limited to traumatic brain injuries. Obviously, we're going to do what we have to do to protect them. I mean, these attacks have to stop. And we've made that very clear.
Oh, yeah, we've made that very clear, Tony. Attacks have to stop, and we're going to do whatever it takes to protect our people, except actually take care of them by removing them from these pointless kinds of deployments that don't help us. But all it does, and that's just something I made clear in a show a couple of days ago, all we do by sitting in these places are provide an easy target for these Iran-backed groups, because without that, they would be much harder for them to attack us. But we make it easy for them. Don't know why we do that. And then now we want to be surprised when some of them have, as you say, what's a little traumatic brain injury among friends? Not that big a deal unless you're the one suffering it. But you see, the bigger problem here is that the president doesn't really have a plan. His spokesman don't even know how to describe what we're doing, other than we're just lobbing some bombs out and wondering if our troops are going to be okay. Where do we go with this?
Yeah, so let's start with the most basic first. If you're the person in harm's way being shot at, it's a big deal. I'm sorry, Danny, you've been there. I've been there. It's like if you have rockets coming down on your position or you're being shot at, IEDs are going off, that's a big deal to you. And for an admiral, retired admiral of any stripe, to include John Kirby, to say that is arrogantly stupid and shows that he's a sociopath. Nobody in their right mind says that ever, Danny, never. So the idea that, oh, yeah, no big deal. This is why they can't recruit people right there. Exhibit A, right there. Why would you be recruited to go defend the nation if you don't even know why you're defending it? And when you're actually in the line of fire, they don't care. Yeah, no big deal. We'll give you all the VA care. If the illegal aliens aren't getting it, you'll get some. Think about that. That's what they do. So that's number two. Anybody who wants to understand the insanity of this policy, go watch the movie Restrepo, Restrepo was in Afghanistan. They sent these kids out to the middle of nowhere in this fire base, and they were targets for the Taliban. It was completely insane. And if you want to see insanity in war, go watch that movie. And I've talked to one of the guys who made that movie, and God bless him for having documented that. If you don't have a clear purpose, then don't put people in harm's way. At this point, since there's no policy, why would you have people out there standing watch when they're simply targets? Why would you?
Yep.
And so to take a step further up, then the Central Command elements, Fifth Fleet, and everybody else, the policy is not to win. Yes, Danny, we could put a stop to all of those nonsensical attacks within 48 hours, probably less, if CENTCOM was given the green light, because Keen is partly correct. There are Iranians in Yemen who are directing these things, much like Soleimani. By the way, Danny, do you remember where Soleimani was killed at?
In Iraq.
In Iraq. That's right. So as far as I'm concerned, the moment they leave Iran, they're fair game. And I feel this way about a lot of folks. Just saying. I mean, this is not the first time I've said this. So if you as a matter of policy, if you wanted to stop it, you could. It could be done. As a matter of fact, I know the British would jump right in because they're feeling the pain much more than we are regarding that 12% shipping going through the Red Sea. Danny, the policy is to fail. The policy is to degrade or remove certain things based on the fact that we're simply using tactical effects to create no strategic effect. That's what they're doing.
So here's my problem, Tony, and I think it's inherent in both what Kellogg was saying a minute ago and Keene says relentlessly, almost daily. They want to ramp things up a lot. They want to, go to much higher. But here's what I don't hear from them, and what is your view on this? They don't ever talk about what next. What if they don't back down? What if they don't get deterred from even a bigger strike and they strike back harder? And now then they hit our assets, which demand another response. Where does this stop? Because I don't see any thought to that.
Well, I think there's a point of pain that you have to establish in the mind of your adversary. Deterrence only works if your adversary believes he's being deterred. It's a fact. So you need to assess, what do they want? What does mean something? And I think there's two things that should be done. First off, for better or for worse, again, I'm not judging. I'm simply stating the Arab allies were very effective in holding back the Iranians and their proxies throughout the region because their interests are very much aligned with our interests at this point. It is what it is. I'm not, and Saudi Arabia was one of our primary allies. They were the ones taking on the Houthi before we were. And the policy of Biden administration is to basically short sheet the Saudis on their ability to do things and also to facilitate the Iranians gaining access. Remember, the Houthi went from guys in the back of Toyota 4x4s with AK-47s to missiles hitting strategic shipping in a matter of less than a year. Everybody says, they claim, we're responding to the 7th of October. No, I'm sorry. You don't go from AK-47s to drones that can attack tankers in 2 days. This didn't happen on the 8th and 9th of October of last year. So this has been something planned. The Biden administration saw it coming. We have at times very bad intelligence. This was not something they missed, Danny. They knew this was coming. And again, the policy is to not address the centers of gravity or even look at how we could go about trying to shut down, like Trump did, the strategic leadership. Most of these guys, both in the IRGC and in Hamas leadership, are cowards. That's why they don't actually get on the battlefield.
Yeah,
folks they're trying to lead. So the way you solve that is when they show up on the battlefield, you make their presence in the battlefield very brief.
So now let me ask you this, Tony. I know you're going to have to jump off here in a minute. You got another television interview on a different network. If you were called into the White House and he said, "Hey, look, what we're trying to, what we'd like to see and how we'd like this to end, but we don't know how to get there. What is a way that we can actually address the problems that are going on, especially in the Red Sea shipping, without taking a chance that we stumble into a larger war?"
Danny, I have been, I've advised every presidency and I've been involved in every president with every administration since Carter in some form, except for this one. First off, they would never do that because they don't want a solution. They're not actually trying to achieve anything that resembles a policy that would be something we could tie a strategy to. But if they did, first off, fix the policy. You've got to establish what is it the United States wishes to achieve. Until we do that, there's no reason to come up with a policy or a strategy to go with it. But yes, if I were just given the military a task of planning and a response to shut down the Houthi, I'd do it. I could do it. I would. I could if I had free reign, I could shut it down in 24 hours. If I had free access to the Joint Chiefs and Lloyd Austin, wherever he is, General Austin, God bless you. I hope you're doing okay. If somebody said you're in a basement with eating chocolate chip cookies, I don't believe that's true. That's not me. I didn't say that. I'm just saying others are saying that. But at this point, it's a moot point to come up with a strategy until you establish a policy which you're trying to achieve the national goals from. So,
Well, that's not very encouraging. But if there's anything that would give me a little bit of hope, though, it's that Biden does want to get reelected. So that's his center of gravity, I think you can say. And so if he's going down this path here,
Danny,
I don't think that that's going to help him out. So he's going to have to do something different to be reelected.
No, it's all about managing the narrative and trying to convince people that their eyes are lying to them. That it's all about the narrative.
No, I get that. But if that's only going to go so far, because at some point people are going to go, yeah, my eyes do see this, and it's not washing. And if enough people start thinking that, that's going to undercut his ability to get reelected, and then he's going to have to do something different, or he's just not going to win.
Nobody's reporting on the John Kirby comments. Nobody's reporting on the lost SEALs who actually lost their lives or are still missing. Nobody's reporting on the fact that the Houthi are not doing they're not being degraded to any degree sufficient, even though the president says it. Nobody in the mainstream media is going to amplify the facts for what they are. They're going to continue to take the talking points from the White House and emphasize those things which make Joe Biden look good and divert our attention from this current situation.
Well, that's certainly the case right now. We can just hope that enough people have enough common sense out there, and I think that American people, by and large, at least eventually, are going to get there, and then maybe we'll start to look at some different things here. But we thanks for your time coming out today, Tony. Again, we always advocate people go watch The Hard Truth so they get more Tony Shaffer, uncensored and uncut. So we look forward to that, and we'll look forward to having you back on the next opportunity.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about all this. I always appreciate it.
Brett, thanks a lot, Tony. And we will see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.